So maybe you've seen my Project K videos, maybe you've seen my video where I go over the rule PDF that Dave Guskin provided for us, maybe you've seen more speculative videos, and you think you've got a decent understanding of Project K, but maybe you're not in the Project K Discord, or maybe you haven't been paying super close attention to all the information coming out of Macau, or maybe you haven't jumped into Tabletop Simulator to play some games on my Tabletop Simulator mod for Project K. Well, I wanted to run through an example game on Tabletop Simulator using both perspectives to show you an idea of what the game's all about if you don't know what to expect. In this example game, it's going to be Volibear versus Yasuo, and we're going to play both perspectives and talk about the different decisions and the different rulings that we're going to see throughout the match. I'm going to include game setup here, so obviously I'm only going to talk about all the things that apply for 1 versus 1, but hopefully we'll be able to clear up as many questions as we can going through a single match of Project K. So first things first, you need to set aside your legend. You need to set aside a partner. I'm going to choose the Furious Volibear, but to be clear, you can choose anything that shares a name with your legend. So there are 2 Volibears here that share a name with my Volibear legend. I can choose either of these as my partner legend, or I believe there's a specific terminology they use for it. I think they call it their legend champion. Hopefully we get clearer terminology on that, but for now I've just been referring to this set aside champion as the partner champion. And with that in mind, we can put these back into our deck, shuffle our deck up, and put that in our main deck slot. We'll take our rune deck and chuck that into the rune deck area. There was a little bit of confusion about how our battlefields work, so let me clear that up. In a best of 1, we shuffle these 3 and randomly choose one to play with. In a best of 3, you choose one. In a best of 3, you choose a battlefield to play with. Then in the next match, you choose a different battlefield to play with, and if the game isn't over, you'll choose your final battlefield to play with that. This makes deciding which 3 battlefields you bring to the table actually important. So I'm going to do all that same setup I just did for the Volibear player as the Yasuo player, and now across both sides of the table, we are set up to play some Project K. So we shuffle up our battlefields, present a card, and these are the 2 battlefields we're playing with. Now, the rulebook mentions shuffling up these 2 battlefields to see who goes first, and the card that you pull is the player who will go first. I don't think in physical environments that's going to end up being too practical because people are going to have different sleeves and it's difficult to randomize it that way. So I would recommend a coin or a dice or anything you have lying around that can randomly determine who will go first. But on Tabletop Simulator, this is perfectly acceptable. We'll go ahead and shuffle these up. Draw from here. Windswept Hillock, we know that that is the Yasuo player, so the Yasuo player will be the one to go first, and then the Volibear player will follow suit. We can go ahead, just while we're on Volibear here, we're going to draw his opening hand of 4 and choose what we're going to mulligan. So I won't get too into the weeds here, but I think it's really important for Volibear to mulligan pretty aggressively, trying to find his ramp cards. With that in mind, I'm going to mulligan Champion and Magma Worm. When you mulligan in this game, you recycle them, meaning that they go to the bottom of the deck, and then you draw right from the top. Still no ramp cards for us on the Volibear side, but I think we still made the correct decision. Swapping back over to the Yasuo player, doing their mulligan now. This Stealthy Pursuer is a fantastic card. Seal of Calm's a bit awkward. I don't think we'll have a chance to play that. So I think maybe we'll keep the Cane and the Stealthy Pursuer and mulligan the other 2. Even though this is a pretty good card, I don't think we... Oh, actually, it combos well with Windswept Hillock, which we might want to keep in mind for Yasuo tech. You know what? Let's just put back... Yeah, let's just put back Seal of Calm, and that's it. I think we're going to keep the rest of this hand. We will draw, and we have Wielder of Water, which is actually a great card. So, first things first on my turn, I'm going to generate 2 runes. We have a purple and a green rune, or a chaotic and calm rune. We do draw for turn, so I draw Rebuke here, but keep in mind, in 4-player games, the player going first doesn't draw a card. So we don't have anything we can afford here. We're just going to pass over to the other player. The other player will draw their card for turn and they will draw their 2 rune for turn. They're orange and red. They don't have anything they can play here either, so they're just going to respectfully pass as well. Okay, so I want to interject here real quick. While I was recording this video, it was very early in the morning, and I made a pretty big mistake in resolving this game. The player going last in turn order, regardless if it's 1 versus 1 or 4-player or 3-player, the person going last gets an additional rune. I don't give that additional rune in this video to Volibear, even though he should have it. Yeah, that's just a mistake on my part. And even though I made that mistake, now you won't, because you just watched me make it. So don't be like me. Remember, the player going last gets an additional rune. Then the Yasuo player will draw for turn. They find a Meditate, and they get their runes as well. Nice. So they have 3 chaotic runes now and 1 calm rune. One thing to remember about runes is that their color is entirely meaningless unless you're paying for a rune cost. If you look at Kain or Stealthy Pursuer, these cards have a rune cost underneath them. The rune cost meaning I would have to recycle the card and put it on the bottom of my deck, but the mana cost meaning I just have to tap the cards required to be able to pay for the card. I'm going to spend 3 to play our Wielder of Water. Wielder of Water has +2 attack while defending and being alone. While defending or attacking and being alone. And that's our first creature in play. We did it. Good job, team. Once that's in play, we'll end our turn. We don't have anything else to do. Then it will be back over to the Volibear player who will draw for turn, finding a Blazing Scorcher and still no ramp. It's kind of unfortunate for the Volibear player. By turn 2, they're looking to either have drawn Mobilize or another ramp card. We didn't find either. That's fine. We will find a way to recover, I believe. So Volibear player is going to pass as well, and it will go back over to the Yasuo player. He will draw for turn, finding a Stealthy Pursuer, another one. Very good card there. We will draw another rune. Let's go ahead and untap our cards, of course. Now we're up to 6 runes. For this turn, I think I'm going to go ahead and spend 4 and a rune, because you pay both the rune cost and the mana cost of a card, or the energy cost of a card. It's energy and runes. I'll spend 4 energy and a rune to play Stealthy Pursuer. All cards enter exhausted, so she's going to come in exhausted. Then I'm going to spend 2 energy to play Meditate, which reads, as an additional cost to pay me, you may exhaust a friendly unit if you do draw 2, otherwise draw 1. So I could just take the draw 1 here, but instead I'm going to exhaust my Wielder of Water to draw 2 cards as the Yasuo player. Then it's back on the Volibear player, who will draw a card and gain their runes. And finally, they can start playing cards. They're going to go ahead and spend 5 energy here. Oops, sorry. 5 energy to play the Blazing Scorcher. Now, we could, as an additional cost, pay an additional energy and a rune to enter ready, because that's exactly what Accelerate does. But we're not going to do that. Now, the main reason we didn't want to enter ready here isn't that we can't pay for it. In fact, this is a pretty good spot to pay for it, because if we had 1 less rune, we would still be at 6 runes, which means going into next turn we would go to 8 runes, meaning we still have the utility to play Deadbloom Predator, Stormclaw Ursine, Blazing Scorcher, but we don't have the resources to play Volibear, or Volibear, regardless of whether we keep this rune out or whether we put it back. Because now that we're keeping it here and we're not using the Accelerate cost, the mana that we'll go to next turn will be 9, which doesn't open up the option of playing any of these cards. So you would think perfect time for Accelerate, right? But the problem is our opponent's board over here is beating out our Blazing Scorcher. So if we had him enter ready and we moved him up to either battlefield, the opponent would just come meet us there and kill off our dragon. I don't think we want that. I think we want to keep our dragon nice and healthy. So we're going to keep him exhausted and pass back over to the Yasuo player. Yasuo player will then draw a card, set up his runes for turn. We now have 7 as the Yasuo player. Good number to have. We will re-ready our units. I think we're going to spend 6 and the rune to play Kain Unleashed. Kain Unleashed obviously comes in Exerted. I'm happy to move the Wielder of Water up to Windswept Hillock. Now that I've entered the battlefield, an empty battlefield that is, I gain control of it. Gaining control of it is considered conquering it, so I'll gain my first point of the match as the Yasuo player. I'm not going to move up my Stealthy Pursuer. In this case, I wouldn't move up my Stealthy Pursuer because I'd rather her back up Kain, and I don't think it's worth the 1 point here. I'd rather use this 5 might offensively rather than defensively. So I'm happy to push this Wielder of Water because it's a relatively low commitment, but I can combo this in conjunction with Kain to do some pretty crazy stuff. So I think we just hold and sit here for a second and then pass over back to the Volibear player. Volibear player is now going to reset their energy for turn. They're going to draw, and they're going to draw their energy. Now they have access to 9 energy this turn. Let's start spending some of that. We're going to tap 8. We're going to put back 2 runes here, which will pay for our Deadbloom Predator, which his effect allows us to play him directly onto an occupied enemy battlefield. So we play him here. Now that there are 2 cards here on opposing sides, there must be a resolution. We can no longer continue the game until there is 1 team standing. So Deadbloom Predator will fight the Wielder of Water. So the very first thing that happens in these fights is that you resolve any when I defend abilities. There are no defend abilities in play here. Then you resolve when I attack abilities. Then there is a window for the defending player to play any spells that they would like to. Once that player has committed to an action or has passed, then it will be over to me to decide whether I want to play any spells or anything like that. Then our units deal damage equal to their might, however we like. So before we continue out through the rest of the steps of combat, let's check our Yasuo hand, see if there's anything we want to play. We could play On Guard, which gives +2 might to our Wielder of Water, taking him from 2 to 4, and then he's also getting 2 from his own effect, so we could get him all the way up to 6, but it's not enough to beat out the Deathbloom Predator. So there's no reason for us to play anything here. So the Yasuo player, quote-unquote, passes and gives initiative back to us. We pass when both players have passed. Now the 2 creatures deal damage, divvying up their damage however the player likes. Deathbloom Predator is obviously going to divvy up all 8 of its might, or all 8 of its damage, I should say, against the Wielder of Water. The Wielder of Water is going to deal its 4 damage back, and then units are defeated or killed or destroyed, or whatever terminology you want to use, when they have damage equal to their might value or greater. Wielder of Water obviously has less than 8, so Wielder of Water will be destroyed, sent into that trash. And technically, as of this very instant, Deathbloom Predator has 4 damage on him. But the showdown is complete. Now my quote-unquote health, or all of my damage, is reset, and I'm perfectly healthy now that this fight is over. There are 2 ways to quote-unquote fully restore your damage. One is at the end of a fight like that, or at the end of your turn, your damage will also reset. Keep in mind that the damage that resets during a fight like that is only the units involved in the fight. So for example, if this received damage from a spell or something like that, let's say there were 3 damage counters on it or something like that, and then I fought over here, it's not all allies that fully heal, it's just the allies at that location, or at that battlefield, I should say. So we've got a big Deathbloom Predator over there, which is pretty nice. One thing I didn't resolve, which I think technically I would have had to have resolved before the fight, but I'll resolve it now, is that we played a 5 might unit, which means we can exhaust Volibear and get an exhausted rune and put it into our rune stack here. We've got nothing else we want to play this turn. Our Blazing Scorcher is ready, so we could push Blazing Scorcher. Let's see, was there a reason we want to do that? So we have on board Kayn at 6 might, with this with 4 might, so they have a total of 10 might over there. They could push to try and kill off our Deathbloom Predator. So we could move our Scorcher up to here, protecting our Deathbloom Predator, because that way we would have a total of 13 here. So he could still come kill the Deathbloom Predator, but he would need more power to actually, or more might, I should say, to actually win. I think that is the correct play, actually. I'm going to exhaust Blazing Scorcher to move it up to Windswept Hillock. And technically speaking, Deathbloom Predator is also supposed to be exhausted, because all cards enter play exhausted. We can go ahead and end our turn. Back over to the Yasuo player now. We're going to reset our energy. We're drawing for a turn, and then we're gaining some more runes. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. We have 4 of each. Kayn's going to ready. Oh, just quickly before I continue with the Yasuo turn, I just realized there's something I didn't resolve. When the Volibear player played the Deathbloom to beat out the Water Wielder here, they should have gained a point for gaining control of this battlefield. Okay, now back over to our Yasuo player. We get to do some pretty fun stuff with Yasuo this turn. We're going to move Kayn here. Then we're going to spend 5 to play the Madden Marauder. And he reads, when you play me, move a unit from a battlefield to a base. So we're going to play him right here. That'll move Kayn back to our base. Then we're going to spend another 3 and 2 runes. Let's do 1 of each, just because we don't have a strong preference of which one. To play Last Breath. Ready a friendly unit, it deals damage equal to its might to an enemy at a battlefield. So we will re-ready Kayn, deal damage equal to his might, which is 6, right to the Blazing Scorcher, which will kill off Blazing Scorcher. That'll discard our Last Breath. And then we move Kayn and the Stealthy Pursuer up. Kayn reads, if I have moved twice this turn, I don't take damage, so he can't receive damage during this fight. And Stealthy Pursuer comes up with him. We're in a fight. We resolve any of our when defend effects. When our attack effects, we don't have either of those, so they're not particularly important here. Technically, there's a priority window for the Volibear to respond. Typically, you can assume that Volibear players won't have a response. There are things that they can respond with, but not with 1 mana and not with this hand. Combat will continue from here. We have a total of 10 might worth of damage to assign. Obviously, we're going to assign that all to the Deathbloom Predator. The Deathbloom Predator has 8 damage to assign. There's no reason to assign it to Kayn, because Kayn does not take combat damage right now, because he's already moved twice this turn. So he'll assign that combat damage to the Stealthy Pursuer, killing off the Pursuer. but the Deathbloom Predator is out of there. There is a new owner of this battlefield, so we'll gain a point, and that'll be the end of the turn. Back over to the Volibear player, who probably doesn't feel pretty good about what just happened. They're going to re-ready, they're going to re-ready all of their runes. Draw for turn, draw a new rune, draw 2 new runes, sorry. We're getting there. Boom. So now in total we have access to 10 mana. Let's re-ready our Volibear. Okay, I think it's important from the Volibear's player's perspective to kill off this Kayn. Kayn's a really threatening unit. Gets to do really scary stuff like what we just witnessed. So we're going to commit a lot here to kill off Kayn. We're going to spend 5. So this is 5 right here. And an additional 1 to play Blazing Scorcher with Ready. In addition to playing it for +1 energy, we also have to pay +1 rune. So that'll go back into the deck. But because we played a 5 might unit, we're going to use Volibear's effect, exhausting him and gaining the top rune. Then we're going to spend 2 to play a Legion Rearguard and do the same, overpay 1 energy and overpay 1 rune to have him enter ready. So now we have 7 might worth of readied power here, and we're going to push on Windswept Hillock to try and kill off this Kayn, who has 6. We know that the Yasuo player doesn't have a response because they have no mana up, so we can move right to damage calculation. This is 7 might versus 6. We're going to assign our 7, obviously, to Kayn. Kayn will assign his 6 to the Blazing Scorcher. So the Blazing Scorcher will die, and Kayn will be defeated as well. But there is a new controller of this battlefield, so we're going to go ahead and gain a point. The Yasuo player gained their 2 runes, and re-readies their cards, and draws a card. Ooh, honestly, not the hand we were hoping for here. We're going to spend 6 and 2 runes. Oops. 6 and 2 runes. To play our beloved Yasuo, who enters exhausted. But then we're going to spend 2 and tap our Yasuo to move a friendly unit to or from base. So we'll exhaust, spend the 2, and that way we can move Yasuo up here. Now, for the first time, we have a when I attack ability for this. So before anything happens, before any might is checked or anything like that, Yasuo is going to deal damage equal to his might to an enemy here. So that'll be a 6 damage against the Legion Rearguard. Legion Rearguard will be destroyed. We'll gain a point for having conquered here. Then we're going to exhaust our Madden Marauder to move him here. That'll also gain us a point, setting us up at 5 points. We're getting there. And we have nothing else to do this turn, so we will end our turn. So we'll go ahead and draw a card. 1, 2. Volibear player has access to 11 mana right now. But to be honest, it's not really helping them. We're going to spend 10 and put back 2 runes. Oops. Put back 2 runes. And with that, we'll play our Volibear that's set up as our partner to the battlefield, entering exhausted, of course. And then it'll be back over to the Yasuo player. It's looking good for the Yasuo player. At the beginning of the turn, the Yasuo player is controlling 2 battlefields, so he's going to gain 2 points. Now he's at 7. He's just 1 point away from winning the game. However, the final point of the game can only be scored under these 2 conditions. One is during that turn, you manage to score at all battlefields. That means in 1 versus 1, you need to control both. And in 3-player and above games, you must control all 3 battlefields. Now, you can only score at a battlefield once per turn. So there's no way for this Yasuo player to win this turn. We're going to ready these. We're going to, not draw a card. We're going to place this here, and we're going to place this here. Then we're going to draw a card. So now from Yasuo's perspective, they should be looking for ways to swing battlefields next turn, because ideally they want to score at both battlefields next turn, or they want to have a big enough tempo advantage that they can guarantee surviving a full turn rotation at a battlefield. Because the other condition to winning the 8th point is by holding a battlefield, which just means that you control the battlefield at the start of your turn. So just to recap, there are 2 ways to score the final point. One is by controlling all battlefields during your turn, or not controlling, sorry, scoring at all battlefields during your turn, or holding a single battlefield at the start of your turn. So part of our upkeep, or start of our beginning phase, was that our cards that were at these battlefields do get to ready up. Then we're going to exhaust them to bring them back home. They're going to come back to our base. Technically, Yasuo should be readied as well. But I think I would float a good amount of this mana. What do I actually want to spend? I want the ability to be able to cast Rebuke if I want to. I want to be able to cast Defy, and I want to be able to cast On Guard. Actually, I don't really need to be able to cast On Guard. So it's just Defy, and it's just Rebuke. So I want to float at least 3. So I have, quote-unquote, 5 to work with here. With that in mind, we'll spend 4 and a rune to play Stealthy Pursuer into our base. And we can call it there. End our turn. And then it's back over to the Volibear player. The Volibear player will draw a card. Reset their runes. Volibear is re-readied. Both of them, in fact. And this is a super awkward position for the Volibear. There's not much they can do. There's no way for them to get more stuff onto the board, but the best fighting effort, I guess, is spending 10 and 2 runes, 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 to play the Volibear, and then I guess they'll move the Volibear, Furious Volibear, to here. That'll give them a point. There's a window of activation there where now the Yasuo player, I think, is going to be very disrespectful. They're going to spend 2 and 2 runes to play Rebuke against the Volibear. The opposing Volibear does have Deflect 2, meaning that the Yasuo player here has to pay an additional 2 runes to be able to target it with a spell, but it's worth it because Volibear's going right back to hand. The Volibear player hasn't got anything they can do about that, so it will pass back over to the Yasuo player. They'll gain their start of turn runes, draw their card for turn, and re-ready their cards. And from there, the Marauder will push up. Technically, he cannot gain the 8th point yet because we have not conquered both battlefields. To collect that 8th point, remember that we need to have scored at all battlefields. What happens when you score but can't gain the point is that you draw a card. So we moved up here. We couldn't increase our counter to 8, so we draw instead. Then we can move Yasuo here, which now that we have scored at all other battlefields this turn, we can score that 8th point, and the Yasuo player takes the victory. So that was an example game of Project K. Hopefully you learned a little bit about how the game works. Feel free to stop by in the Project K community Discord. We would love to have you. Keep being awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.